0.
Good evening. This is the May 2nd, 2022 meeting of the City of Brisbane Complete Street Safety Committee. I'd like to welcome everybody to the meeting. There's some paperwork we need to read to you to begin with, and it's also posted on your screen for you to follow along. This meeting is compliant with the Governor's Executive Order N-2920, issued on March 17, 2020, allowing for deviation of teleconferencing rules required by the Brown Act. The purpose of this is to provide the safest environment for staff, committee members, and the public while allowing for public participation. The public may participate via a Zoom web link and/or by phone, or by using remote public comment options. The committee may take action on any item listed in the agenda. We'll post that here shortly for you to see. Public meeting videos. Meetings of the public may view the Complete Street Safety Committee meeting by logging into the Zoom meeting listed below. Complete Street Safety Committee meetings can also be viewed live and/or on demand via the city's YouTube channel at www.youtube.com/BrisbaneCA or on Comcast Channel 27. Archived videos can be replayed on the city's website at http://brisbaneca.org/meetings. Joined by Zoom. Topic: Complete Street Safety Committee meeting. Time: May 2nd, 2022, 6:30 p.m. Pacific Time. www.brisbaneca.org/CSSC-Zoom. The meeting ID is 976-0955-7422, and the passcode is 747389. If you want to join by phone, you can do so by calling 1-669-900-9128, and the meeting ID is 976-0955-7422. To address the committee. When an item you are interested in appears on the agenda, you may address the committee at that time. If the matter you are interested in is not on the committee's agenda, but is a matter that is within the committee's subject matter jurisdiction, you may address it under public comments. Remote public comments. Meeting participants are encouraged to submit public comments in writing in advance of the meeting. The following email will be monitored during the meeting, and public comments received will be read into the record during oral communications or during the item that it refers to. The email is tsantoyo@ci.brisbane.ca.us. Could we go to the next page, please? Okay. Special assistance. If you need special assistance to participate in this meeting, please contact Tomas Santoyo Valaquez at tsantoyo@brisbaneca.org or at 415-259-1107. Notification in advance of the meeting will enable the city to make reasonable arrangements to ensure accessibility to this meeting. Okay. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Could we please take roll?
So that's normally me.
Oh, okay.
Christian,
Here.
Linda,
Present.
Patrick, I'm going alphabetically,
Here.
and Darius.
Here.
All right.
Okay. Everyone has received the agenda. Could I have a motion to accept the agenda as it has been posted? To adopt the agenda as it has been posted?
Second the motion.
How about you do it first and somebody else can second?
Oh,
I'll make the motion to adopt. the
Okay, there we
I
go.
second.
Okay.
I second the motion.
We do that by acclamation or do we need a roll call, Karen?
I don't know. Let's try acclamation, see if we can
Okay.
get away with it.
All in favor? Raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. At this point, I would like to open up the meeting to oral communications for items that are from the public, for comment from the public on items that are not on our agenda. Do we have any members of the public who would like to make a comment at this time?
Tomas or anybody that emailed or
No
You don't have
calls
your
or
text.
emails so far.
and no one in the no one on the webinar that's
No.
wanting to speak.
Okay. So no oral communications then. All right. Have a motion to approve. First of all of you have received the minutes and had a chance to review them. Were there any changes or additions or deletions that anyone saw? No? Okay, I didn't see any either. Could I have a motion then to accept the meetings, to approve the meeting minutes for our meeting of March 7th, 2022?
I move to approve the meeting minutes.
A second, please.
I second the motion.
Okay. Can we take a vote on that, Karen? Is acclamation okay, or verbal vote
let's-
okay?
Let's do
Yeah.
roll call, I guess. Christian,
Okay.
Aye.
Linda. Linda? Are you
I don't
muted?
see, I think we may have lost her.
Okay, well, we still have a quorum. Is,
Yeah.
Tomas, make sure you check if she's
Yeah, I'll keep an eye out.
came back on. Patrick,
Aye.
Darius,
Aye.
right? So that's, we'll just call Linda and abstain.
The next item on our agenda is election of chair and vice chair. Actually, that was, I think Linda was going to do the nominations, but
Yeah, we kind of need her, don't we? You
well,
want to come
Um,
back to that?
sure, that would be fine. Why don't we move on to the potential, our two projects, item A, which was potential for one-way streets, Monterey and Mariposa between Visitation and Solano. I think we've all seen the city council meeting of almost a month ago now, where they have directed us to address the residential parking permit or potential for a residential parking permit program in central Brisbane. And they have asked us to put this on hold. So I think we really did not get too far into this. I think some of us went out and did some surveys, and I would ask Tomas to maybe distribute that to us so that we have it somewhere. I think we sent in our results to you. If we could distribute those back out to the committee and then get it into whatever our working framework will be in the future. But that way, at least we all have the data that we worked on, and then we'll be moving on to the next project. Okay, Linda, you're back. We lost you.
So, yeah, that's fine with the one-way streets. I had asked him to hold off just so that before the meeting, no one misunderstood that, we were gonna go work on that to any great length. So,
Okay.
yeah, he'll send that around.
Linda, you're on mute.
I'm sorry, my computer just started buzzing and my screen went black.
Wow.
Don't know what happened. Did I miss anything important?
No, we skipped election since we knew you would come back. So
Okay,
we
thank-
actually delayed that, and we were just talking
Appreciate it.
about putting the one-way streets project on hold per council direction.
Okay. Great.
So we'll come back to election of chair and vice chair.
Okay. If my computer act stupid again, please wait for me.
Okay.
Thank you.
Are there any nominations for chair? We'll start with that one. Whether self or others, Linda?
I have something to suggest. Yes, we ended last year with a lot of difficulty and confusion and things changing for our committee. Also getting new members and that sort of thing. And I don't really think that you, Pat, had an opportunity to complete your year. And we have new people. Well, Darius is new and we've lost some committee members. And I think it would behoove the committee for you to accept another term, if you will, as our chair.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll do that if you guys vote that way. But if there's somebody else that wants to run, please raise your hand at the moment.
Or any other
Or nominees. Yeah. All right. Should we put that to a vote then?
Yes.
Okay.
Can we get a
Yeah.
panel that do a vice chair too? Or you want to do one by one?
Sure. Yeah, we can do it all together. Yeah.
I think we should do them separately because it's kind of hard to do both at the same time.
Okay.
Well, I guess if you have multiple, 4 of you. All right, so it sounds like no other nominations for chair. Is that right?
Are there any others? No? Okay. It looks like just the one, Karen.
So, acclamation, I suppose.
Okay.
Everyone,
Do
vote for
I
Patrick?
do I call for that or do you call for that?
if you are willing to have Patrick serve as your chair, say aye and raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Linda. Thank you, Christian. Thank you, Darius. Appreciate your confidence in me. And I'll try and make this a good year for us. Get some good things done. Okay, shall we move on to vice chair then? Linda?
You good? Yeah, I'm kind of dominating this part, huh?
Okay.
Darius, you're new, and I don't want to put that burden on you. And Christian's been with us for a while, and I would be really honored, Christian, if you would accept the position as vice chair.
I think that sounds like a great idea, especially, keeping Pat as the chair. I think we have worked together well and with you, Linda, and I also look forward to work with Darius
Yeah,
and
me
the new
too.
staff.
Yeah. Okay. Any other nominations for vice chair? Okay. Why don't we take a vote, I guess, by acclamation? Raise your hand and say, if you would like Christian as vice chair, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
Congratulations to you both.
Christian.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Let's move on then, back to further down our agenda and start working on the residential parking permit program. I think we've all had a chance to look at the council meeting. There was a lot of information in there, a lot of discussion, but I think and we'll probably have to go back from time to time and look at that again, at least individually, so that we understand the mind of Congress, of council. But I think they were very clear that they to move in the direction of looking at the feasibility of a permit program for Central Brisbane. And then how would the logistics of that work out? That was my takeaway from the meeting, but I'd like to hear what everyone else thought after reviewing the video. I'll call you guys alphabetical order. Christian.
Sure. So, first of all, I watched the video, and I want to say that it was a very comprehensive discussion from all the consoles, and they hit a lot of the angles. As a matter of fact, it did remind me of the discussion that we had internally in this committee as well, because it's quite a bit of a struggle to strike the right balance, provided what we're encountering with. Um, so I think you're right. It does sounds like they don't want to spend any more time with peripheral stuff. They just want to dive into learn more about the feasibility of a residential parking permit. And in order to do that, one of the things that caught my attention was what Cliff was saying, that why don't we hire a consultant? And well, they push back and they say, well, we got the committee to do that, right? And we have I think we have a competent team, and we could tackle that. But nevertheless, I think we need the structure in place, because there's a lot of moving parts over here. I just did a little briefly search on this. Like, for instance, if you search like what San Mateo did is different from what San Francisco did. And as a matter of fact, San Francisco is revisiting other alternatives, just not parking permit. Now they're looking at how do accommodate scooters, how do accommodate blocking whole streets from traffic after the pandemic. So now we have the opportunity to do this parking permit. We shouldn't just look at that, but the other thing also is capacity, and I think that was mentioned toward the end of the discussion. Do we know how many cars there are in town, and what's going to be the right balance? For instance, like in the city, you have people that don't have cars, and they sell their parking permit. But you also here you have streets that there's so much parking that they could accommodate. So what's going to happen with the other people that have a lot of cars? So you almost have to go hitting all these different categories and just keeping notes, and then try to strike the right balance.
Okay, thank you. Darius, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I thought, two takeaways I thought, came up with was one, that they kind of want a pilot program potentially for us to define sort of what that might look like. And then, of course, the broader program. I think one of the key challenges is sort of how do we determine the per household maximum number of cars or something like that, right? Like, who are we to also say that the house can only have 2 cars per person or whatever it becomes, and how many permits do we give out? That kind of comes to the capacity issue. And that'll be sort of maybe a block by block, or I don't know, how you sort of divvy it up by neighborhood or whatnot. So I think that'll sort of be a major challenge for us. And then likewise, I did try to look at sort of what other counties and cities are doing. And that is, there's something to be learned there, but it's also challenging because everyone is a little different. And some places charge, some places don't, I guess, sort of will depend. And then, of course, enforcement, I think, is the other big question, is how much of this is going to be enforceable, and how is this different than sort of the 72-hour rule, where you got to move your car for 72 hours, and how much will this address that doesn't, so yeah.
Okay, great, thank you. Linda, your thoughts?
I really appreciate what both Christian and Darius brought to the conversation. I guess for myself, summing it up, is that there are so many moving parts, as Christian said, that what I think might be important is to figure out what the moving parts are, first of all, come up with a list. And I don't know if because we can't work as an entire group meeting to discuss this unless we're doing it publicly, maybe we could each you take an assignment and come up with all the questions of what parts we need to study in order to come up with what makes sense. as a
Okay.
recommendation back to the council, and work independently and then bring it back to discuss as a committee. In order not to violate any Brown Act or anything else, we do need to be careful because there's so few of us. I understand that it's very important to the council that we get this done. The question of how we divide up the permits is a nightmare right now in my mind. But we also need to look at how many cars people have. Just I won't even list it. There's just so many parts to this that it's important that we maybe spend some time writing down the questions that come to mind as we're thinking this over throughout the month until our next meeting, and then have some time to discuss the questions and ideas that come up, and do it publicly as much as possible. And then if we need to pair up in teams later for observations or something, we can do that.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Linda.
So,
Yes, Christian.
yeah, I have a question. So what Linda's saying is, and I'm sure she's speaking from experience because she's been in this committee and she knows that a lot of especially this subject has a lot of moving parts. And that was one of the reasons why I think we should have a tool that will get all of us in the same page, and let's say one of us start putting information about capacity or doing research of how we're going to answer that question, because I think that's important, and that's just one category. And then as Darius was saying, we got the enforcement part of it, right? And I'm sure there's a lot of more other parts. So if we just do our thing and then come to the meeting, we might be duplicating work instead of synergizing the work. And I also believe we have a timeline. We don't want to be waiting a month to provide our result. I mean, are we being prohibited from having discussion that doesn't occur in the meeting?
Up to 2 people, I guess. Well, let's see. Karen, how does the Brown Act work? It's a voting majority cannot meet outside the meeting. So when you have 4 people, 2 is not a majority. It would be 3. Is that correct?
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
Okay. So 2 people can have the discussion. 2 of us, Darius and Christian, or Darius and Linda, or Linda and Christian, or somebody with myself. Each of those 2 groups of 2 could have discussions, but could not be a discussion of 3 of us.
Maybe we should do that. Pair
Okay.
up.
Let me throw out an idea if I could. I mean, we've got some time tonight. I thought council was fairly interested in having us get something moving fairly quickly. They gave us 6 months, and you hear 6 months and say, yeah, okay, 6 months, but if we don't meet during the summer when staff takes their holiday break, then we might be down to 4 or 5 meetings, say, to get this done in 6 months. So there's a lot of moving parts, and I thought what we might do tonight is maybe come up with, since there are 4 of us, come up with maybe 4 or 5 major areas need to be addressed. And then each of us go off the month to work on that specific topic, that particular part of it. And Christian, for instance, you just mentioned 2. Darius as well, and Linda, capacity is one area. How do other cities figure this out? Do you limit? Do you not limit? How do they decide? You know, I've read some things about they measure this capacity on the streets and stuff like this, how many parking spaces are available, and that's how they set their permits out. There are a lot of different ways to do that, and I don't know all the ones that are out there, but that's just an example. Another one would be how do cities fund this thing in terms of paying for the enforcement officer and the permitting people and so on and so forth. So there's kind of some broad areas that I thought maybe we might, each of us take one of them. And then, you know, Christian, I think you're going to talk about a data repository for us here a little later in the meeting. We can put what we find, whether it's references to news articles or things that we find that on other cities' websites that they're doing. I don't think we're ready to go talk to other cities yet in terms of verbal communication with them, but I think at some point we will want to do that to understand their lessons learned. But I'm thinking we can start doing the research and data information gathering to understand what other cities are doing. And then when we come back together next month, we can start going through those and discussing what may or may not be applicable for Brisbane. What do you guys think?
I think I like the idea. Are we going to be assigned like a particular job for each of us, or are we all just going to go out and search for information?
I think it would be good if we each took one topic, and you know, it's voluntary, you know, which, you know, I guess the person who goes first gets the choice of 4. The person who gets last goes to choice of 1, you know, but that way we would not have overlap. But, you know, as we go around and we find something that might be applicable to somebody else's topic, send them that information. You know, let's interact to help each other.
Okay.
That doesn't mean that person would go and research it. Just it would be, hey, I just found, you know, X city XYZ is doing this. It's what you're looking at. I thought you might be interested, type of thing.
I like it.
Yeah, I mean, you know, it is a, you know, it's a big project, but I think that, you know, Jamie and Linda and the committee, you know, has a good sense of familiarity from their research that they did, and we're going to and so I do like your approach where we could, you know, have different main categories and we could distribute it among the 4 of us, and then we could have staff providing support, you know, and having the reservoir as just as a dropping point, and also as a point, as a medium to inform us and not necessarily discuss, you know, what we're doing.
Right.
And I think that's going to move the ball fairly quickly.
Okay. All right. Darius, any thoughts on that approach?
I like it. I think it's a good way to kind of break it up
Okay.
into individual parts and tackle it multiple different ways.
Okay. I mean, at some point, then we group up and start working on each of these topics, drilling down as a committee. But I think as a first go, in terms of finding out what other cities are doing, lessons learned, I think if each of us breaks off and goes off, we might be more productive. And that might get us going quicker, that when we come back next month, we have a lot that we could start drilling down and focusing on. So with that in mind, what do you guys think are the major, I think capacity is a major, and I put capacity with the concept of how much parking and how many permits do you give a household. I think that's all kind of one topic. Would you think that's true, or as one of the topics?
I kind of have that almost as 2 separate topics, where one is sort of how much can we handle in terms of parking, And then the
Okay.
second is like how much do you give per person in terms of, I feel like that's a different sort of question, but maybe, yeah, it depends on how many items we have
Okay, all right. Permits per,
per
I don't know,
capita or
house-
per household or
per,
something,
per
yeah.
household or something, yeah,
Resident or whatever, yeah.
yeah, okay. All right,
Question, excuse me. Can we really decide how many permits or even discuss that until we have the other information?
no,
All the other,
right, we can't, and we're not going to, but we're going to find out how other cities approached it.
oh, okay, sorry.
Yeah, so I mean, I've
Misunderstood.
read some cities limit it, some cities don't, and I'm you know, I just did a very quick look, and I'm thinking, okay, well, why? What's your thinking on this? You know, so we, regardless of what we may decide, we want to understand what the logic of other cities was
Okay.
for each of these things.
I
Okay,
get it.
so
Yeah. So, you know, so I think so this is going to go, and it's a little confusing. So you're going to have different categories, but at the same time, you're going to have different phases, right? So I guess the
Mhm.
first phase is the research. And then
yes,
we're going to research the capacity. It's you know, it's an interesting one because maybe if we're able to get some support how to read the maps, we could do an inventory of the street and have a educated guess as how many cars can be on the, you know, on the street. And then, and also I'm thinking when they do the permit, we will suggest the permit have to have some sort of section or area or street name because you know, you're going to have people living in different streets. So if their street gets filled, then the
Mm.
person is going to go to another street and it's going to be like, hey, why is this person from Mariposa going to Monterey? You know, and so you have to have some sort of notification in the permit, and that's going
okay,
to be a big task, right?
yeah,
And so there's a lot of that, and then the enforcement of it, then the, you know, the feasibility, you know, how we going to manage this, how much you're going to, you know, charge all that, because then after that you're going to go into, I think we need to do another, we go into the second phase, which is a public outreach, right? Maybe we need to do another survey or to tweak it around, or why not? And perhaps then that's when it goes into legislation to ask for the money or to throw it on the vote. So I
okay.
think we should probably have it in three phases. But the big first phase is research, where we have to get a sense of, you know, of the whole project.
Yes.
I like that. Yeah, I agree.
So we're in the research phase at the moment, and I'm hoping maybe,
Karen has her
they-
hand up.
oh, who does?
Karen,
Okay, yes, please. I don't see that on my screen.
Oh, I just took it down too.
oh,
Oh, okay.
sorry.
Well, I had a thought when you guys are talking about capacity, the space we have versus how we're going to hand it out, and there's also the factor of most of it's residential, but a little bit of it is commercial, and commercial we might want to restrict in the daytime, and residential might want to be restricted in the evening. And
Hmm.
there have been ideas tossed around about if you have off-street parking, you might be given less permits, or it might be based on how many bedrooms your house has. There's a lot of different ways. It'll be I think it's a big conversation for you guys to get to that. So maybe for the first month, we figure out what other cities you want to look at and divide that up and just see what they're doing, and then have that big conversation about what everybody else is doing and what seems like it would work best here.
Okay. Let
Look
me
at-
see if I go ahead.
Look
Linda,
at what existing permit programs are out there, and then have the whole committee conversation about, well, which one do we think we want to recommend using?
So you would break it up. Let me see if I understand correctly, Karen. You're recommending we break it up, say, cities are doing in everything that they're doing about their permit program, whether, say, somebody looks at San Francisco and comes back and says, this is how they deal with capacity. This is how they deal with enforcement. This is how they deal with how many permits per house. Is that what you're
Yeah.
recommending?
Well,
Okay,
it's a suggestion.
that's
Suggestion.
there. I hear logic with that as well. I do. What
Yeah,
is the
so-
committee? Go ahead, Chris.
I think, in terms of capacity, you're going to have a lot of questions. And what Karen are saying, I suspect those are going to be part of the question, because that's going to help ultimately how to implement it, and how we're
Mhm.
going to teach it to the during the public outreach phase of things. Because if you have a household that has like 4 bedrooms, sometimes it's irrelevant if the street is so big. I mean, you could have 5 bedrooms. That doesn't mean you're going to get five permits,
Right.
right? Because the street is so big. And then you also we're going to give permits to the people that they're going to be parking their car in their garage.
Well, these are all questions that I think we need to understand how other cities have looked at it and how they have dealt with that, and see what we think based on
But-
what we see.
But I thought of your idea was good, that let's keep doing more research in our city, and
Yes.
then we go, once we have a feeling where we at, then we go asking for how, okay, so how should you do this? But if we're just going to go and have them tell us, and it's not applicable to our city, it's sort of like
Oh.
counterproductive in a way.
We can
Okay.
probably pick and choose from things that sound like would work. But we need to ask the question. And I'd like to ask one more thing. Are we all going to be asking the same questions? So should we have a set
A set list. Yeah.
list of things that we want to ask, so that we're not wondering if Burlingame is doing something different from Colma or something, whoever else has. I don't know if they have permits or not, but for example, it would be good to have similar questions asked of whatever cities we have, so
Yeah.
that we're all looking at the same types of material. So maybe we need to come up with a list of questions. And Karen has her hand up.
Mhm. Yes. Yes. Who had their hand up?
Karen,
I think she's muted.
you're muted, Karen.
Oh, yeah, I was, sorry. I don't want you to hear the background noise if there is any. Those are good thoughts, Linda. And yeah, I don't know if anybody else has lived in San Francisco, and it's just one example, and there's no indication that we would do things exactly like they did. But speaking to what Christian said, I lived in an apartment that had probably 15 units, and you could get 2 permits per apartment, and there were definitely not that many spaces on the street. I think San Francisco hands out, 2 max per address, end of story. So we may or may not end up needing to find out the capacity, but I think if you guys want to research that, maybe one of you could work with staff and we could look at maps together and do some
Mhm.
counting of capacity, if that's what you want to do at this point,
Karen, you look
I
so relaxed. I'm jealous that you're in Mexico.
I'm very relaxed. I'm glad I didn't have to cut it short to come to the meeting, so.
Yes,
Yeah,
very
thank
good.
you. Thank you.
There are benefits of the pandemic. The way our lives have changed. So, I mean, we're in a data gathering phase. I think we all agree on that at this point. We're kind of researching, and as I did just a little bit of digging around this week, I was actually learned things, and that way some cities do things that I never would have thought of. So I and I thought, I don't know if that could apply to us. Some of them I thought, no, definitely that would not work for us. So I think the information gathering phase is really important with that, and it's to be gathered in the sense of not with concern of would it apply to Brisbane or not. It's just a matter of gathering the information of what other cities have done, And then we can talk about amongst ourselves. And once we have that data, we can then look at it and parse it and decide whether we think it would be applicable to Brisbane or not. But until we get that data, we can't, I don't think we know all the different permutations to permit programs that are possible. I think there's a lot that I certainly do not know, that I think that we might discover some things that would be very helpful for us. So with that in mind, the question comes down to, we kind of have two ways to approach the research. We could do it by the certain topics, let's say enforcement and capacity and number of permits and something, or we could look at it on, go to what does this city do? What does city A do? And look at the whole approach that city takes. And then somebody else is looking at what does city B do? And we look at, that person just looks at the whole approach of what they do. So it's kind of like looking at it horizontally or looking at it vertically, you know? I don't know which one would be better for us. Any thoughts on how we might approach the data gathering? Or do you have preferences? Yeah, Linda?
Listening to what you just said, I don't see why we couldn't get both things at the same time from other cities.
Okay.
We have our topics that we're interested in, so we could gather information, but be sure to include those topics in what we're asking. And then we're kind of killing two birds with one stone.
Okay.
That's my suggestion.
Okay, very good. Christian, Darius, any thoughts on this?
I agree. I mean, if we do the approach of the cities, I think we need to have some unified topics to go after, which is exactly what Linda was just saying. So yeah, I like that a lot. Very smart.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's important to get a sense of, because one of the things that they mentioned, I mean, the devil's in the detail here. Even within Brisbane, you have streets that are very different from each other, right? Mm-hmm. And then what you don't want to, I mean, you're going to be doing a lot of, you're going to be changing culture to begin with, because right now the culture is wherever you live, you could park the cars in front of you, and people know that that's okay because that's where you live. Mm-hmm. If you come with a permit system, I think some of that, some new, residents are going to say, yeah, I have a permit. I could park whatever I want. And so that's going to, create some sort of, it's going to be different, to put it lightly. And there's going to be a process to accommodate that. But the other thing that we need to have a good sense of, what I mean by have a good sense of, the size of the street and how many houses are over there and what's going to be the ratio, because that's going to speak to equitable parking. You don't want a big house that you're going to provide them with all the parkings, and everybody else is going to be like, we can park and that house has all the parking spaces.
Right.
So what is a good ratio? Let's say if, what's the length of a block? And then if it's and these streets are tiny, are we going to park on both sides? What are we looking at? 20? So this is where, staff could probably help us out in terms of ratios and the size of the street, just to start having some sense and, or start putting some meat on the bone. What are we dealing with here?
So, because, I know exactly what you mean. When 2 years ago, I guess it was 2 years ago, when we did the parking survey where we went out and counted parked cars. Mm-hmm. Linda, I think you were part of that. Christian, I don't think you were part of that group that did that. James was. Karen came out, and then Justin. I think that was that it. I think
so. That sounds like the group.
Okay, and something that was of interest, and we talked to Justin about, okay, can you get capacity, say, from Google Earth View, say? Can you Can you see that from an Earth view, from Google Earth? Tell us what is the capacity of each street. And he said, yeah, you can, you know the length of a car, you know the length of its thing, and you can then count the spaces on a street. But what we found when we were actually out walking, everybody has a way of squeezing in more. So you might look at it from a proper parking perspective. You never cover a driveway. You're so many inches back from the driveway. You're so many feet back from the corner, and all this stuff. But actually, when you get out and look at, because our parking area is so constrained, everybody just kind of push those limits. Like they're over the driveways a little bit. They're kind of close to the curb, the corner, and it doesn't. It's not in terms of a prim and proper way of parking, but it's what everybody has worked out and understands to do in order to maximize the amount of parking on any street. So I would say that the best way to actually, and when we were doing the survey, I would say there was almost, when I was out there, almost never an empty parking space. They were all full every single time on the residential street. So you could almost get capacity by just counting the cars that are there on the street and figure that's what it's going to be. And maybe that can be done from Google Earth, or I don't know if you could just drive up and down we're in a small town. You could drive up and down the streets one day and two people, this person counts them on this side, that first passenger counts them on the other side of the car, on the other side of the street. I don't know, but I think most certainly whenever we start the permit program, we are not expecting regardless of how many permits are given out, I don't think we're expecting there to be a dramatic increase in the number of cars trying to park on the street at that point in time because of the permit, right? If a household has 3 cars, say, and they get 4 permits, well, they got to pay for these. At least in other cities, that's what they do. Some cities, you get 2 permits, and then the 3rd permit is more expensive. The 4th permit is even more. So there's an economic decision that everybody has to make. Says, okay, yeah, I'm entitled to say 4 permits for my household. I have 3 cars. I'm only going to buy 3. And now somebody mentioned reselling. I never thought about that. In San Francisco, I guess they resell. Karen mentioned that. So maybe that's something maybe we don't allow that because parking's so tight here. But I think what we want to start with is an understanding of all the different ways that are working in other cities. And then start taking that understanding of the world of parking permits and look at what our specific problems and constraints here in Brisbane are, and then start weeding out, that's not going to work, that's going to work, this one will work, say, and start working that down into, a group of possibilities that we could recommend to council. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that does make sense. So one question I have: are we going to be asking for permit for the residents that are going to park their car in their garage?
Well, I don't know.
I haven't gotten there yet.
I haven't gotten to that point yet, right? I don't know. See, this is why I think where I live, we don't have a problem. So I've got to get myself to a point where, I used to live in the city and different places at different times. Some places I never parked in the same place twice from day to day. It was over this block, that block, here or there. Another place that I lived in the city, it was like, okay, I always parked around the corner. There wasn't a whole lot of housing where I was living. So I could always park in almost the same place every night, And so I know
I
need to get to
that's a very important question because we just need to. I don't know if it's a legal question or why not, but if we're going to give permits to to residents that are parking in their garage, and also the ones that are parking in front of their driveway,
Right.
and that's and if you do that, you have a lot. You have a big chunk of the street for those that are parking in front of their driveway, because if a house, half of the house is the driveway and the other half is for a car.
Hmm.
I just so it's a math game. Well, what I'm getting at is like I said, let's start thinking to put some meat on the bone. It's going to be a math game if we want to be equitable with
Yeah.
with everybody.
Yes, I agree. Linda?
Going back to when you were speaking, Pat, a couple of things crossed my mind. We have safe pedestrian routes that delineate
Yeah.
where pedestrians should be able to walk, and the sidewalk is very often blocked. And there's
Yes,
a
it
lot of
is.
houses that don't have off-street parking. And one of the things that I was thinking about, because we do get a lot of crowding on some, like, for example, the first block of Mariposa Street, when we observed that, and also up the 700 block of Sierra Point was incredibly park tight.
Okay.
And some people don't think about leaving space for someone else to park. So maybe it would be a good idea to also think about delineating the parking places with paint, so that
Yes.
there are actually a certain number of parking places that are mapped out and people aren't parking kind of
Hmm.
regularly. But I think we also need to take into account the safe pedestrian routes when we're doing this, so that those
Yes.
are protected and maybe enforced a little bit better, because that was such an important part of this committee's work at one
Mhm.
point and continues to be.
Yes, it
So
does.
that we might be able to take care of some of that at the same time.
Okay, I think that's right. Okay. I think what I would recommend in terms of the way we proceed, and I think, Linda, you kind of said this. If we look at it, if we break apart and each of us take a couple of cities, say, to look at, and then we drill down within each city in these specific topic areas, and we have 3 topics so far that we're looking at, and I don't think we've finished that topic list yet. We have capacity, permit, and enforcement. I think I would add funding. How do they pay for that? And I'm sure there are other. What do you guys think about in terms of the next month between now and our next meeting? That's our focus individually, where each of us has 1 or 2 cities that we will investigate for permits and look at how they do things in the topic areas, which so far we know capacity, how many permits per household, and which streets it applies to, enforcement, and funding. What do you guys think? We,
I'm thinking the way I envision it. How about if we have like a liaison that will reach out to the different cities and it has a set of questions, right? And that person, as anything, if you're doing something, if you're doing one thing, you're going to become more of an expert how to deal with that thing. So we could probably assign a person to reach out to the different cities, and then one of us to reach out, to do internal research of capacity, because that's a very good question that we need to answer. And then other one could look at enforcement or visibility, just to try to have try to move the project into different areas. And then when we get together, we share what we learn, and then that way I think it should probably move a little more synchronized on
Okay.
different aspects.
Let me see if I understand what you're proposing. You're saying we should look at it individually back into the topic area. Say one person looks at the capacity, as many cities as they can find, and how they deal with capacity. Another person, say, would look at permits per household and look at as many cities as they could possibly find to see how they deal with, how do they assign permits per household. Is that correct?
No, I was thinking more in the lines of if we get a liaison to look at the different cities, and you're going to have a set of questions, and you're going to go to the different cities and ask those questions. And then another person will look at internal capacity. Like Linda was saying, I think that was a very great point, because we're guessing like how we're going to do this formula, how many cars per street is she, and then if we start delineating or putting parking lines, or why not, then we're going to have a better idea, and that's going to be more controllable. And then if somebody's going
Right.
to pay for a parking, they're going to be like, okay, I better have a parking, and then
Okay.
because this person, so that one person could be doing that type of activity, which this type of will fall under the internal capacity, and then the other person could start looking into enforcement. What will be the hours to enforce it, who's going to enforce it, and so on, feasibility.
Mhm.
And that way we all have our little buckets, and then when we come together, we just share where we at.
Okay. So when you say a liaison, you mean one of us, right?
Correct.
One of the
correct.
committee members. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. At this point, I don't know if we're able to talk to the cities directly. I found a lot of them had posted their information online, right? Karen, what is your thoughts in terms of how should we be talking to cities directly at this point, or looking for web information, website information? What would you recommend?
Yeah, I would agree with what you're saying. I think a lot of it can be found on the web if they have a program. And I
Okay.
guess you guys ought to talk about, like, are you going to look for, I've been thinking about this while you've been talking, just cities on the San Francisco Peninsula or in a greater area, ones that are similar size and terrain, like the Sausalitos and Hillsboroughs, or how, you don't want to cast maybe the net too far. There's probably all kinds of programs, but
Yeah.
how are we going to pick which ones to research?
So if I understand what Christian is saying, you're saying don't restrict it to any cities. Is that correct? Look at capacity as a topic, and do the research based on how do cities address capacity, right? And it isn't necessarily how San Francisco would address it, or Sausalito, or Millbrae, or whoever, right?
Well, I mean, what okay, let me see, how can I put it, because I think I'm not being clear enough. So what I'm saying is, one person should be assigned to do reach out to the different cities, and I think and I understand what the confusion is, and that person should just not limit to ask questions about capacity. Since,
Okay.
because, since you're reaching out to the city, you're going to have a set of questions. And in that set of questions, you're going to include, capacity, permits,
Okay.
costs,
Okay.
et cetera, et cetera. And
Okay.
then another person should stay here in Brisbane and start doing some of the actual capacity, in the field, driving 2 or 3 streets per week or something, and then try to get a sense, of the capacity in that sense, and start putting other information together. Then another person should start getting a feeling of the enforcement of it and the feasibility. You know, how much does it cost? Where we're going to get the information from DMV? You know, reaching out to the police officer here and just get more information. You know how
Okay.
this works, and
Okay.
that's what I was thinking.
Okay, I understand now. I think at this point to look at the specifics of Brisbane, I think it's a little too early for us to do that. And I think it would be good for us, to all of us, to be immersed in every aspect of this, in the sense of all of us gathering information from other cities on the research, because then that develops a deeper understanding within each of us to address the problem here. And then when we get to, okay, what capacity, say, does Brisbane have? I think we should all be driving or walking the streets, and so that we, so we actually, I always find when I'm out in the field on these things, I get a much deeper understanding of what the issues are than, then I'm able to just listening to somebody else, and tell me about how they perceived it. So I think in terms of doing the Brisbane work, let's put that off for a month or two, okay? And I think it would be good for us to drill down, and I think the best thing to do is to look at other cities, not just Bay Area or California specific, because we don't have a lock on the best ideas, most certainly. No particular region does. I think we can learn from what other places do. And each of us take a couple of cities, say, and drill down into the areas of capacity, permits, the geographic limit of a permit, say, is it good for that block? Is it good for a 4-block square area or something? How they deal with enforcement and how they deal with funding. What do you guys think? And then let's come back and talk. Yes, Linda?
Well, I'm just wondering if some of these cities might have it incorporated into their general plan. And if we couldn't just get an email with a copy of that section. And if the questions that we are looking for, capacity, permits, enforcement, funding, are not in that part of the general plan, then we could make a phone call or
send
an email.
So I found a lot of information just Googling parking permits, city parking permits. And a whole bunch of different cities all over the country just popped up. And I looked at just a couple of them. There were some in Iowa, there's somebody in Pennsylvania. I didn't specifically look in California. But I mean, and it took me to the city website, as well as there were news articles. I came across one about San Jose. It was in the Mercury, how one area, they recently implemented it, and the city people wanted expanded, and they don't have it. It's actually a negative cash flow. So the city is saying, yeah, we don't want to expand this. So by doing a Google search that way, and if you come up with a whole lot of information that I think would help us. And I guess we can try and get general plans. I don't know if it would be in the general plans or what, but that should pop up on an internet search, right?
I would think so. Also,
Gary, go ahead.
How do we decide which cities so that we're not duplicating each other's
That's a good question. Yeah. Karen, do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, I was hoping, I don't know if this idea of how to share data has progressed. I've been on vacation for a few days, but I'm getting back Wednesday, and I can kind of push that along so that at least there's some way that we can look at and collect the data that makes sense, that's maybe been easier than what we had to do with the one-way street. So I can commit to trying to press those involved to get an answer on this for us.
Okay. In terms of finding which cities we should look at, what are your thoughts, Karen? I mean, you know of cities already that have parking permit programs, I imagine, right?
You know, I know of some. I haven't really talked to even, like I said, all of our peers on the peninsula or in San Mateo County. So what I know is anecdotal too. I think, I guess more information doesn't hurt. But if we're trying to not, bite off more than we can chew, then we want at least to think about ones that are similar than we are,
Yes.
similar to us, because if they're very different, they might, it just makes it a whole different economy of scale. A lot of things are different if you
Mhm.
have a very big city.
Yes.
Aaron,
Yeah.
is there a possibility that shortly after you return and are ready to do this, that you could come up with the cities that have parking programs and do a sign up sheet for who wants which cities to investigate? It's something like what the Lions Club does. When they have the tree lot, you sign up for certain hours. And if we could just do something real simple like that, then we'd have our assignments before the next meeting. We can probably
Yeah.
come back with a lot of information prior to June.
Yeah. I mean, if you guys are comfortable with us doing that, I mean, I think probably even Tomas could do that.
Yeah, I can
Right
definitely
away.
set
Yeah.
something up this week for sure. Maybe probably even tomorrow. No problem.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. How does everybody? Yeah, I like that idea, Linda. Christian, Darius, what do you think?
I like that. I think we should nail down what sort of questions we want to look into, but I like the idea of sort of having a sign up sheet for different cities of similar size and sort of
Okay.
What's
facing
the
similar challenges.
total number that you guys would want for you to look into?
I'd
12
like at
or
least
20?
2 or 3.
Yeah, 2 to
So,
3 per person.
Okay. So maybe no more than 4 per person, 2 to 4 per person.
Four is a lot, I think.
Yeah. Okay.
I'd be willing to do 4.
Okay. So I guess find 16, and hopefully if we don't fill them all up, everybody's got different schedules. So if a person can do 4, that's great. If they can't, that's okay too. But hopefully each of us can do 2,
Okay.
a minimum of 2. Okay. All right. That sounds great. What are your thoughts on things to be looking at in what these other cities do? We've talked about capacity, how they assign permit, enforcement, what streets, what area permits apply to, and funding. Are there other areas that we should be investigating as we look at these?
If you're asking me, I kind of agree with what the comments you made a bit earlier about, like, let's gather the data about their programs before going into lessons learned. Because I think there's, what we can get on the web is probably a good first step, but there's probably more too. And maybe this has to do with what Linda was saying about general plans, is that, like, in San Francisco, I know that they have had area-wide parking programs, and they've done public outreach about them, but that's also been about putting in meters versus permit parking, and having gotten input from neighbors and residents and the public. So that seems like the second level is like,
okay.
First is just what do you have, and then the second maybe why you have it and what are your lessons learned.
Okay. All right. But okay, that sounds good then. All right. Does everybody agree this is a good way to go forward between now and the next meeting? Okay. Any thoughts, Christian?
So I think in addition of those questions, we should probably be asking them if they could share some surveys that they used when they did their public outreach, right? And the other thing, if we're going to look at these different cities and see what they did. we should probably try to compare apples to apples and build and have a criteria that we're just not looking at San Francisco, for instance, as a whole, because that's a huge city. It might not be applicable to Brisbane. So, I mean, those would be my two comments. And I'm guessing, we would do a online search, and then we wait until then we will wait until we have a meeting, and then to go and actually call the cities, or who's going to be calling doing the type of outreach.
Yeah, I think outreach would be direct outreach, but I think when Tomas comes up with this list, say this week, I think between whatever cities we individually choose, I think we can start doing web research. And so we can come back in the next meeting with some understanding of what other cities are doing. And I agree with you, San Francisco would not be, what they're doing would not be applicable, I think, to what we're doing here, or what we might need to do here. It is a big city. They have blocks and blocks of potential parking spaces that we just don't have. And we have narrow streets. I think I know Tomas will come up with a good list, but it needs to be applicable to us.
Yeah, I'll keep population and all things like that in mind when I'm making the list.
Great, thank you. Linda?
I just wanted to add that as we're going through what we find on these particular cities that we're going to look at, we may actually come up with more ideas and things to investigate. So I would keep my eyes open for other solutions or other things that these cities have done apart from our list that could contribute to our findings.
Okay, that's a good point. Okay. Any other thoughts or comments on this project at the moment? Okay, let me summarize where I think we're at then. Tomas will come up with a list of about up to 16 cities, 12 to 16 cities, and send it around to us sometime this week, that we can then each of us choose which cities that we would individually research, between 2 to 4 cities each person. And then each of us should go do a web search. We don't need to call them directly in terms of one-to-one contact, but we'll individually research what that city is doing with their parking program. And then at the next meeting, we'd summarize that, and the next meeting, bring that back to the meeting. Does that sound okay? And actually, I know, Kristen, you're going to set us up with a data repository here, and maybe we can post our summaries on there, so that we can all see them before the meeting. And, just as, city X does this with capacity, did that with how many permits per household, so on and so forth.
Yeah, I think, regardless who implements the repository, I think it's probably helpful just to have you guys look at what I had done, and just that way at least see the idea, and then you guys could further think about different ways to tweak it or expand it when we get to that point.
Okay, we'll look at that in just a couple of minutes here. Anything more to discuss on residential parking? Karen, any additional thoughts on your side?
You had asked Commander Garcia to attend, and he contacted me and said he had a last minute conflict. Okay. And I said, I think it was, if he can come to a future meeting, it'd probably be even more relevant. I know that at the council meeting, and he expressed to me in the short communication that we had, that we are small, and he would be concerned about doing enforcement in-house or with staff, and that he would probably tend to be recommending as a staff person that we contract out for enforcement. And then Tomas was telling me on a Teams discussion asking about whether Mario was going to be here that Commander Garcia, that he mentioned he would have mentioned at the meeting the city of San Bruno, so that will be on the list, I'm sure, Tomas, and that they, I think, contract out the whole process. The way in Brisbane we used to handle, for example, business licenses in-house. People would have to go into the finance department to get a business license, and now we've contracted that out, so it's this online service that you apply for a
Okay.
business license and get it from. So you might be able to do that with permits where you apply and get it through a. I'm not sure how
Okay.
San Bruno does it. I haven't researched it, but that would, I mean, he will come to a future meeting and say that, but his recommendation would probably be for the size that we have, that it would make more sense to contract out the enforcement. Like you're basically hiring a meter maid that comes through.
Mhm.
It's going to be
Okay.
evenings.
Well, who is the parking? The city has hired a parking enforcement person, right?
No, we have
Uh,
a community service officer. She does a whole variety of things.
Okay, okay. That's what I was confused on as to, I thought that was just a parking person.
No, there's, there's we had a child seat program and she helps people install those.
Okay.
And there's a bunch of other,
Okay.
I mean, we could ask Commander Garcia more about what she does, but she's not. And I think she's kind of at capacity. I know that
Right.
in my experience, I asked her a couple things and she's like, you really got to schedule with me to get these little special projects done. So.
Okay.
I have
Why don't we- Yeah.
just one yes, one question as a curiosity to staff. If do you have a relatively straightforward means to find out, what is the how many vehicles are in Brisbane?
Registered to people whose addresses are in Brisbane, you mean, or just within the city limits at a given time?
Because I mean, obviously there's different ways to skin the cat, so to speak. I mean, you could have a counter that counts the cars that are coming, and there's probably like two streets, right? A lot of them come in, and get a sense of how many cars are coming in and coming out, and I'm sure some statisticians could take a good guess and say, how many cars are here. Oh, you could probably go to the DMV and get a number with this zip code, but just to get a sense. I mean, if you don't, I know at one point we might need that information.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'd have to ask Commander Garcia, and I feel like I can't remember. We were having a conversation a while back, and he told me that they are aware of some people that have registered their cars at a different address if they have, say, a second home. And I don't know if it had to do with some kind of a tax or something, but there are some challenges to that, but I'd have to ask him to answer that. And that seems like that's still, again, on the step 2 about how much capacity do we have and how many vehicles we have. But I will make a note to ask him and hopefully he can be here at our next meeting too.
And
Yeah.
I'll make one last point. And I think some of us might have forgotten to mention this. What I did get, what I also gathered from the from the council discussion, and we also talked about it, among us. One of the things that we're aiming is to try to root out the people that have abandoned cars or potential people that are coming from the airport. I mean, they're leaving their cars here when they go on business trip or why not. So just to keep that in mind.
Yes. Agreed. Okay. Shall we move on to new business then? Karen, we have you have a letter to show us for a grant application?
There we
Here's the
go.
letter right
Thank
here on the
you.
screen.
So, little background is that there are all kinds of grants that get announced, calls for projects. There are federal funding sources, there are state funding sources, there are regional funding sources, and they all have different call for projects, and they tend to not necessarily even do them on a regular cycle where you can expect them to be in March of every 2 years. So they're kind of rolling grants, and we've, we can't go after all of them, being a small city with small staff. And honestly, some of the federal and state ones are bigger hurdles to get over, and the reporting required for them can be really extensive, and it just maybe doesn't pencil for a smaller amounts of money. So these are and there are a lot of bike ped grants out there. And so the San Mateo County Transportation Authority has a couple this year that look pretty approachable staff. And there's one in the fall that's going to be a bike ped grant coming out that we should probably talk about when it gets closer. But this one is Alternative Congestion Relief Transportation Demand Management, which is basically getting people out of single occupant vehicles. And if it's a transit tied type of grant, even better. So at the staff level, because the cycle is really short, it came out in the middle of last month and is due later in May. We came up with the real simple thing that you guys have had interest in before, is improving the shuttle stops. And the Transportation Authority staff asked us for a pre-screening meeting, which already happened before I went on vacation, because we had to have them by, I think, the end of this week. So we wanted to get it out of the way. And they wanted to know what our project was. And they were very excited about it. And they said, they'd set aside some of this funding for smaller cities so that the smaller cities don't get squeezed out by the bigger ones that have a lot more residents and a lot more people using transit or whatever the case may be. And all of the other cities they'd talked to had applied for planning grants. So they were even more excited that we asked for infrastructure. So this is a project to improve the shuttle stops in Crocker Park with a pad and either a shelter if we have funding, or at least the seating, the bench and trash can, and put the signage, put it in an appropriate location that is ADA accessible, obviously, and not, kind of eliminate the safety issue of having a drop off near it or being too close to the curb or blocking pedestrian space with that bench. So we are asking if the Complete Street Safety Committee would authorize the chair to sign a letter of support. And we drafted this letter, and it's certainly open to anything different.
I think it's an excellent letter. I like it, and I would vote for it.
Okay. Any other thoughts, Darius? Any thoughts or
I
comments?
also like and support it.
Okay. Christian?
I support it.
I do too. I think it's a great letter, and I'm absolutely thrilled. I hope we get some money for some more bus stop improvement. Could I have a motion then to authorize the chair to sign this?
I'll make a motion to authorize the chair to sign this letter.
Do we have a second?
I second the motion.
Could we take roll call, please?
Christian Cabrera,
Aye.
Linda Detmer,
Aye.
Patrick Tainter,
Aye.
Darius Woodziak.
Aye.
Okay. Motion carried. Thank you. Karen, how do I sign this? Do you put it on letterhead and send me a PDF, or do I come to City Hall? How do you want to?
I'm going to ask Tomas, well, when do we need them by? The due date's March 27th. Electronic, I think, is fine, right?
Yeah, that should be fine. May 27th.
So we'll email it to you with letterhead.
Yeah.
Or actually, it's from the committee, so we wouldn't use, I don't know if we would use the city letterhead. We kind of use like your own typeface, I think.
Okay. So the one you've sent out is the one I can sign, the one I already have in the email, or you send it a different?
I'm gonna let Tomas answer.
I think that one should be good to go. If you could just electronically sign it and then
Okay.
it should be all set.
I'll sign it tomorrow and I'll send it back to you.
Awesome, thank you.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Let's move on to, if there's no other new business, let's move on to staff updates.
I did not prepare a ton because I didn't bring a lot of notes on vacation. I apologize, but we did, I think you guys might have seen in the blast, I hope that we did receive, finally, third time's a charm,
Yes.
the grant funding from TDA Article 3 to construct the walkway from Alvarado to San Benito.
That's
Yay.
fantastic.
Yeah.
Yes.
So moving in the right direction with these utility easements and getting things built is kind of exciting.
It is.
Is that, Karen, that was a full build-out grant, is that correct? Not just design?
It was for construction, so
Okay.
council funded the design a while
Yeah.
back, and
Yes.
it needs to be, pushed through to the finish line. But we're hoping that I think we said next summer, fall, we might have this thing constructed.
Summer 23.
Yeah,
Okay, great, great. Good news.
I'm still
Okay.
waiting for the shelter that we paid for with the committee recommended, and Measure W paid for at 140 Valley. So that's
Okay.
that should be in this month. And then you guys might have seen on social media that the one that was selected in town at San Bruno and Mendocino, we Justin had picked out, Tomas's predecessor had picked out a seating for that location that met ADA standards, and it was this particular product that was only manufactured by one little company, and they want to sell them in lots of 12, the Simi seat. And we
Mhm.
didn't want to buy 12, and I wasn't really sure if they were going to, fit the feel and the aesthetic of Brisbane, and if people would like it or not like it. So we found out that South San Francisco uses them, and we coordinated and had them sell us one. And then
Great.
Caroline Chung, communications manager, posted it on social media, and I told her specifically to ask people, like, what do they think of it? And we got overwhelming positive feedback. So
Great.
unless you guys have any other thoughts, at the smaller locations, we would probably continue to use those.
Sounds good.
So we are in the process of procuring the first one. Is that correct?
It's installed. It was installed
Oh,
a week
okay.
or
Oh,
two
I
ago.
didn't know that. Oh, okay.
I've seen it.
I
It's
haven't
pretty
been on
cool.
San Bruno. Okay.
Yeah, it's
Wonderful.
pretty cool.
I'll have to drive by there and look at it tomorrow. Great. Okay. All right. Any other staff update?
I don't
Why
think
don't
I
we,
have. Tomas, do you have any?
Nope, nothing from me.
why don't we move on to chair and committee member matters? I think, Christian, you had project management tool you wanted to present. You could present to us using Microsoft Teams.
Yeah, we could. I do have a generic project management template, and just do a little pony show on that repository. I guess I will need.
Do you need Tomas to share your screen?
I
He
think
should
so.
be able to now. I just got off of it. He should be able to share now.
All right, let me see. Forget how to do this. Hold on a second. Okay. In here. There it is. Can you guys see it?
Yes.
Okay, so this is Teams, and this is let me walk you through a little bit. What I so this is a what I had envisioned was or we talked about having a repository tool where we could put our documents and be more engaged on the different projects that we are working on. So as you could see on the left here, I have the agenda, and then you could just drop on them in. And then this is the current agenda. And then once this is, so in the next meeting, this will go into archive agenda, and then we'll put the new one here. And then we have like different documentation, like, the committee members roster. And so everybody knows the where to find our emails and contact information. And then this is the template I talked to you about. It's very generic, and we could, enlarge it, and why not, to do our project.
Okay.
So, and then, but, in reality, the best use would be for our projects, like we're talking about the Brisbane residential parking permit. And then we could have a channel that would have the discussion, and then the report. And then we could put the report here, and then supporting data. This is what Jamie did.
Mm-hmm.
If you remember this.
Yes.
And then I have different articles that I found in the web related to, to what we've been talking about. So that's pretty much it. And
Okay.
and so I guess it would be great if staff is able to talk to to the city IT and flush out any other concerns, so we could have a repository and start putting our data in one area, and we could communicate better.
So, Christian, we could all post back to this. Is that how this would work?
Yeah. So I think like on this, it has a these are the features that it has. It has some, you could do some chatting.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, the main thing is to go to the teams, the project, and in the project, for instance, here, you could start a new conversation and drop whatever document and write something about it, and then the other person sees it, right, and then goes and looks at it. So it's not. I mean, so it's definitely an interactive tool, and it's very common. And just a lot of these regulations, I guess, they were done before a lot of this technology was in place. So you have that, right?
We need a central data repository. I'm curious, Linda or Darius, did you try and accept the invitation yet?
I did, and I couldn't get to the site.
Okay.
Also, can I just mention one more thing while I'm viewing this screen? Is it, as long as we don't have a conversation, but just pick up information and not respond to each other here, does that keep us in line with the Brown Act? I guess this is a question for Karen.
Yeah, I think it does. And that was the initial take from the city attorney. He said two things. He's like, well, if you just want to share data, could you have a Dropbox folder or something like that?
Okay.
And I said, yeah, maybe. They were asking about Teams though. And we are planning to roll out these city email addresses. So he wanted to find out from IT what the best solution was and be able to offer guidance about communication. And the caution is just that the city wants to roll out city email addresses for reasons that, we see in the news about politicians, that you use those for city business. And then if it were a Teams channel, it would be based on those email addresses, not your personal ones. And that I just suggested that they look into this, because if we have it, the council would probably going to say, well, we need this too. The planning commission, the other, committees and commissions are going to be interested in having it. So we want to make sure it's something that's, there's guidance about if it is using Teams, or if it's Dropbox, that it's done with your city emails. And they're still, they were putting them together when I went on vacation, but I guess they want to roll out and offer training, because people are going to have to get access to Outlook. They may want to load it on their phones. It works different for different types of phones. And we just wanted to make sure, since this wasn't coming from us, that there was training so that nobody was stuck. Not, we talked about, if you have a city email address in Outlook, can people forward it to, if you have Gmail, can I forward it to my Gmail? And there was concern, the city attorney or whoever decided that this was the best thing to do, is that you don't answer from that Gmail address. So there's a lot of nuance that we want to work through, and we don't want to get too far ahead of the process, is my concern.
Okay, thank you. This is all new to me, this kind of format. And so I guess learning how to use it is a good idea. If there's going to be a presentation on how to use this, I would appreciate it.
Do you have a Facebook account, Linda?
I do.
So it's a very similar approach. It's something where obviously, so you communicate and drop things and interact with other people. But I used it in my business for about 6 years. It's pretty simple. It's just an app. And in terms of so in one of these channels, we could put a channel here, or have a little training that might tell us how to use it and how to engage in conversation because of the Brown Act. And I think that would probably we talked to the attorney to see what he suggested, but that should be something that we agree that we're not going to engage into conversation. We're just going to have it as a media to drop information and read it among us, and so that should be good.
I like it very much.
Yeah, I like it too. Darius, by any chance, did you try and accept the invitation? Yes.
I did try to accept the invitation, and it also didn't let me accept it. It gave me an error. But I do use Microsoft Teams regularly at work also, and I'm a big fan of it. So I think it's a great platform.
So I could not get any. I also got an error message, so I don't know.
I'm wondering.
I have to. Yeah, let me look into that. Maybe it's something that I have some sort of a restriction there, because to be honest, I do use it internally with my team, and I do share it with some external user, but not that much.
It could be that if you invited the whole group. Yeah, if you invite the entire group, like all of us as a committee, instead of individuals, that won't work. You have to invite our individual personal email accounts. You mean
one invite to one person? Is that
right? So you can't, for example, invite the thread or whatever, the group message. If you invite the group, and then it won't recognize that. It has to be the individual email address.
Okay.
You know what? I got in, but it wanted a password. And that was
your email when you because basically what it's doing is your email is going to go through my organization to get to it. So then you create your own password to that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So I logged in with my Microsoft password. No, that's not what.
The one that I put in was your Yahoo email.
Well, yeah, my Yahoo email is it used to be called Microsoft Passport years ago. And that's what I used for my Microsoft. That's always been my Microsoft username, is my Yahoo email address. And so it logged me in, and I can use Office Online and all that stuff independently, but I got that error message then that I sent you after I did log in. It was strange, very strange.
I think it's because
Yeah.
yeah. Did you try to invite the Brisbane CSSC? Is that the entire group then, or is that you as a user?
No, this is a user, and
It's okay, it's you guys.
yeah. So let's say I want to, add a member, like, I think you should be able to get an invitation, but I don't know what's happening. I could touch base with the Microsoft team tomorrow and find out, how
Okay.
how to. But if the city rolls it out, he could open up the system for us where we could be owners of the teams and then modify it, or we could just be members, and then the city will have ownership of it and put all the regulations or rules.
Right.
Sounds good.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Christian. I think this would be a good tool for us. I appreciate it.
Yes, I think we need something like this. You would help us out a lot.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, any other committee member or chair committee member matters to discuss? Okay. Well, then I think we have reached, the next item is actually a holdover from our last meeting, which is which night of the week we want to hold our meetings on. Years ago, it was on, we talked about this last week, and we really did our last meeting and did not reach a decision. We used to meet on Wednesdays, and that is the day of the week that staff stays late. A few years ago, we changed it to Mondays, and so staff stays late on Monday and Wednesday at the beginning of the month. And the thought was to move it back to Wednesday. And I think we were evenly divided last time. So I guess I wanted to put it out there again. Was there any interest, or what did everyone think about going back to Wednesday? Karen?
Sorry, let me lower my hand. I had a new thought when you said that about staff. It was also that it was a little bit easier that City Hall is open on Wednesday evening until 8.
Yeah, that's right.
Facilitated us, not having, opening the door, but other people being able to direct the public in when we met in person. So if you're still kind of split or no one has a preference, I mean, staff we flex our schedule so, it can work out. Actually,
okay.
Hamas works 8 to 5, and then he works longer, whichever night it is. He said he didn't have a preference, but maybe we think about, we can postpone until we see that we're kind of more in person. And then it might make sense to be on Wednesday.
Because we could use the community room. Yes. Okay.
Right.
Okay.
If we're split, if everybody wants one thing, much more than the other, then that's great too.
Any thoughts on that committee?
Yeah, I mean, my vote would be for Wednesday.
Okay.
Yeah, I had no preference either way, so I'm good with Wednesday or Monday. I have 0 preference.
Okay.
I'm just used to Monday, but I could change if that's more appropriate for the entire committee. I don't mind doing it on Wednesday. I kind of like to get it over with at the beginning of the month, and then have the month to think about it. But Wednesday's just 2 days later, so I can do that. I'm flexible.
We seem to run into a lot of holidays on Monday. That's what I've observed. Yeah. Especially New Year's.
Yes.
I mean, I would vote for Wednesday, and I mean, it sounds like there's not a strong belief for Monday. I guess, should we put it to a vote and see how it goes? And
so would that include our next meeting in June?
It does not necessarily. We could take a vote and have it start July or August, or we could structure that however we would want to do that.
All right.
Linda, would you like to make a motion, since you may have a non-June date in mind?
I'd like to make a motion that our meetings be moved back to Wednesday. First Wednesday of the month.
I second the
Commence-
motion.
Commencing immediately or commencing later in the summer or,
Commencing immediately. Let's go ahead and
Okay.
do it.
okay. And Christian, you seconded. Okay,
Yes,
could
I
we,
second the motion.
Karen, or Tomas, could we do a roll call on that?
I'm doing that. Christian Cabrera,
Aye.
Linda Detmer,
Hi.
Patrick Tainter,
Aye.
and Darius Wozniak.
Hi.
Unanimous.
Okay, so I don't have my calendar in front of me, but our next meeting then will be,
I think it's
Let me
June
pull it up.
1st.
is that June 1st? Okay. We still haven't gotten away from the first day of the month, but we're getting it done right away in June, getting it
That's
out.
right.
right.
That's right. Because we're
All right.
good.
That's right. Thank you, everyone. Are there any other matters to discuss? Any other? I think we're completed for the night, right? Okay. Could I have a motion to adjourn?
Now,
No?
motion to adjourn. Motion to adjourn.
Second?
I'll second that.
All in
second that.
favor? All
Aye.
in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, everyone. Have a good May month.
Thanks,
You
guys.
And we'll
too.
look,
Thanks, everyone.
and
Aye.
watch for Tomas' email.
Yes.
Okay, thank you
Yes.
all. It's good to see
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you. Good to see you
Aye.
too. Good night.
Good night.
Night.